Welcome, I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is going to be another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we're talking about faction wars, and I'm talking about the Knight Revenant faction in particular. And for me, this is the hardest out of all of the factions. It was the absolutely last one that I was able to complete, and I had to manual it. And it was like a 20-minute manual run, and I absolutely hated it. Thankfully, since I did that, we've had a lot more champions introduced into the game, and it makes this faction a lot easier to accomplish. So there are multiple ways to get through it with this faction, but as always, you're going to need to be very conscious of the buffs, the debuffs that you bring in, and because of the difficulty of boss, you're actually going to have to probably manual it to get through it on the first run. But I'm going to be able to show you guys a full auto team here using all epic champions to kind of show that this is a very attainable boss. You can beat it, definitely. It just is a little trickier than some of the others out there. But anyway, that's enough of that. Let's go ahead. We're going to look at the bosses so you have an idea of what you're facing at each of the 3 boss stages, and then we'll of course look at the champions that are available in this faction so you have an idea of things that you might want to bring in, and then very last we'll do a run. I really appreciate you coming by to watch this video, and if you enjoy it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. And of course, if you enjoyed today's music, we have that Soundstripe link down below in the pinned comment description of this video, along with my code Deadwood Jedi to save yourself 15%. And of course, if you're looking for account work, you can find that on my website, deadwoodjedi.com. All right, let's start off looking at the different bosses so we know the kind of buffs and debuffs we're looking to bring in on this team. So stage 7 here, we've got the Dueler, and this is obviously a very tough one because of the mechanics that he brings, but at stage 7, it shouldn't be that hard for you. As long as you bring a decent amount of survivability, you should be able to take this down without too much issue. His A1 attacks one enemy and ignores defense, and enemy max HP hit. This one will slap very, very hard on your champions. And then the A2, it will cleanse himself and then place True Fear and a stun on all your other champions and then give them an extra turn. So basically he, immobilizes all your champions and then he hits really, really hard. So this one can definitely be tough, especially because he's giving himself turn meter boost every time he gets hit. That's definitely problematic to get through this, but it's stage 7. Stage 7, you get, 3 champions at level 60. You're going to be able to get through this pretty quickly. So it's not too difficult from a can I finish this standpoint. It's just in the early levels it might be a little bit tricky for you, but basically if you're struggling with this, just keep ranking up your champions. You'll be fine eventually. Stage 14 is the Incinerator, and this one's obviously a bit annoying. We've got a poison on the A1, a True Fear and poison on the A2, but the big thing is there's turn meter reduction on all of these skills. So you're going to be constantly fighting up an uphill battle to stay in tune with the boss, and that's going to be the trickiest part, right? There's some HP burn and stuff in there. The best way to deal with this, obviously bringing block debuff, bringing cleansing will help a lot with the debuffs that are being placed. Also being fast, bringing turn meter control will help a ton as well. Stage 14 though, it's not the hardest of the bosses, right? This is not one that I would be really careful of. Take down the minions, and after that just focus down the boss and you should be fine. As long as you have enough survivability and healing to be able to survive the hits, you should be good, because even with an AoE True Fear, that's one turn of these debuffs landing. If you can time it with a block debuff or a cleanse, that will only help you, but it's really not worth worrying about too much. It doesn't take a lot to get past this guy, specifically because he doesn't have a lot of crazy mechanics that are real problematic. And then of course we get to the Mirror. The Mirrorer. This one is a pain in the butt, and the reason why is of course because he has, not only does he have a steal buffs from you and put his debuffs on your team, which is a real annoying effect and makes you really want to time out when your buffs and debuffs go out, but he also has an HP exchange with an enemy, and that is super annoying because when you get him down really low and then all of a sudden he heals all the way up by stealing the HP or exchanging the HP with one of your champions. So this one is really tricky as a boss to deal with. We can put out things like block debuffs, but it's not really going to help us when he steals those buffs from us. So it's a little bit tricky, and bringing in buffs is less helpful than with most bosses. What we definitely want to do is build enough survivability on our champions so that they just don't die. That would be very helpful. Bring in enough healing so that even when they do get hit, they're able to recover afterwards. Those are the two biggest things, and we need to bring in enough damage so that even when he exchanges HP, that we can kill him before that comes off cooldown again. So those are the big things. The other hard part with stage 21 are the waves. Most importantly, there's a Valkyrie wave that we have to deal with, and that can be very problematic, because obviously Valkyries put up that massive shield and counterattack, and there's 3 of them. So if you're not careful, that will wipe you out more often than not. Now, with the team I have here, I'm not even sure if they're all geared up right now, but we've got Whisper, we've got Miscreated Monster, we've got Rector Drast, we've got Doom Priest, and we've got Thalesia. And I think this is a pretty solid team here, bringing the right buffs, debuffs, healing in order to get the job done, as well as some damage too. But let's look at all the champions in this faction and give us a sense of what's going to be some champions that we want to kind of target here. Now, out of all the factions, I found this one to be the hardest without bringing in legendaries. So when I did this, I definitely used all the legendaries I had available for me to help me get through it. But you don't necessarily need them because this faction has grown over time. There's definitely a lot more options here. Now, obviously, the most important thing is going to be healing. And there's not going to be anybody better than Rector Drast, mostly because she also brings a very nice revive. And as you can see here, there aren't any other options for that. So revive, I think, is very vital, just kind of break in case of emergency type of thing. And she does super good healing. So Rector Drast is a great option here for you. Outside of that, champions like Sinesha that does an HP exchange, or like I should say normalization among your champions, can be really, really valuable. But you'll notice there just isn't a lot of healing in this group. That's really all there is. And so it gets a little tricky. So you want, Doom Priest. I'm sorry, Doom Priest is the other one who's amazing, right? She has a natural cleanse ability. I 100% recommend Doom Priest, recommend Drast, and Sinesha, if you don't have one of those two, would be somebody that I'd bring in, because you do need some healing here. Now, outside of that, obviously, ally protection is a great survival mechanic, right? Miscreated Monster is amazing at that, but you need to be careful. You don't want the boss stealing that ally protection ability. So generally, when we get to the boss, we just don't use that skill anymore. So that's definitely something I would be on the lookout for. Now, obviously, with Rector Drast, I could revive Miscreated Monster, so it becomes less of an issue. Hence, I'm able to try to run this on all auto. But yeah, that can be definitely a difficult prospect right there. Now, Thalesia does the decreased defense AoE, and you'll notice out of all these champions, is the only one that can do that on a consistent basis. One of the reasons why I think she's great. Weak affinity for the Valkyrie waves is not the best, but she's going to be really, really good for the boss specifically. And generally, even when you're going against bad affinity, an AoE version of a decreased defense is still really, really helpful. And so somebody I would definitely look at. There's another champion I do want to point out here, and that's going to be Faceless. And a lot of people use Faceless to get through the Valkyrie waves because of this A3 skill here that ignores shield and block damage and hits really hard. It also ignores defense. It can be a really good way to kind of one-shot and get through those Valkyrie waves, which is definitely good. Other than that, he's not particularly useful. I've never used him for anything in this game outside of that, so definitely there's some limitations to it, but he can be really valuable as far as getting through that. We also have a lot of AoE champions, right? Golden Reaper has an AoE in the A2 and Great Turn Meter, definitely a champion I would be looking at. And I've used Skull Crown as an AoE, Sinesha has an AoE skill. Those are really good champions to kind of bring in. And when I first did this, not to mention Miscreated Monster, when I first did this, I had like 4 champions and stun sets. It was the only way I was getting through the waves. There's a lot of provoke and stun sets on my champions, and that might be a really good option for you. But it's tricky. These Skullcrown in particular has really low stats to survive, and so was an option that I tried a bunch and elected not to use, and I don't really recommend. Skullcrown's great. Doom Priest, Sepulchre Sentinel, obviously, with block debuff as well as increased defense, is a really good option. Rector Drast is great. I actually really like Golden Reaper as well. And somebody I've been using lately is Whisper. She's just a really hard damage-dealing champion, so definitely somebody worth bringing in. But those are really the ones I'd recommend to look at. Miscreated Monster, obviously, as well. The problem with this faction, I think, mostly is the rares here aren't really going to be helping you, right? Renegade's obviously very good, but we don't really need that cooldown reduction. It's not fast enough to be that valuable, and I don't really recommend any of these champions to be brought in, and definitely a weak spot of the faction as a whole. So what makes this really hard is the epics are okay, but not great. You'll notice I didn't name a ton of them as being options that you really want to use. So this is probably one of the few factions where you're really dependent on the legendaries to help get you through it. And that's obviously the biggest trick to this. So there are options here. There are champions that you can use, some that I am, some that I'm not, but in general, not a lot of great options, right? Cryptwitch, Pitiless One, Necro Hunter, Deathless, Kitus, even Burgoth, Pestilus. Like, none of these are champions I'm really eager to bring into my team. Farsalis, right? Like, I don't want any of these. So there's limits to it, but obviously there are options, and I'm going to show you that. Okay, so as we get in the run here, you're going to see Rector Drath is amazing. That Veiled and the healing constantly is really good. There's Celestia with the AoE decreased defense. We followed up with Maneater, or I'm sorry, Miscreated Monster, and he provides that nice AoE stun naturally, which is great. You can put him in a stun set and help, you know, just double up on that. I think is a really good idea. Celestia also has that, you know, Hex debuff, which is great. It helps all the damage you're dealing kind of spread to the other champions with the change in Hex and how it works. It's actually really nice. And then, of course, Whisper does great single target damage as well. So you can see we're able to get through this first wave without a lot of issue. The hard part really comes on this next wave. And what do we do here? You know, obviously, you know, Valkyrie gets that turn meter boost because of the bus that we put up. And you can see we're already suffering. We already lost Celestia. That's definitely going to be an issue. Now we lost Whisper. The key is surviving here and having Rector Drath, who I do use in Hydra. She's in a reflex set, so she is built very well, but bringing her in is really helpful. And you can see Miscreated Monster, those stuns are super, super valuable for us. Now, one of the things I would probably recommend doing if you're going to do this is focus on certain champions, right? Focus one Valkyrie down or focus Errol down, but you need to, you know, having a little bit more of a focused attack will be helpful, especially because those counterattacks are going to be out there most of the time. But I think we should be able to get through this full auto, so I'm going to do my best not to touch anything, not to focus anything, and just see if we can't do it. It's tricky though, you know, we've got to survive. We have to have Rector Drath survive. They have some hard-hitting champions, and as you can see, it can get a little bit problematic here. But yeah, I'll step away for a minute and let you guys watch and see where we got. Okay, so we're at the boss now, and you can see all those stuns that we were able to throw out there from Miscreated Monster was valuable. Getting the revives from Rector Drath was invaluable as well, and we were able to get through the waves. Now, when we get here to the boss, the first thing we want to do is really take down the minions. They're going to be a pain in the butt otherwise. See, we get that provoke out there. It's very annoying to deal with. So being able to take down the minions is super valuable. Now, I absolutely love Whisper. I think Whisper is great for this because Whisper hits so freaking hard, and that becomes really, really valuable as far as getting through these waves, getting through the boss itself and beating him down before that he does that HP exchange or after he does that HP exchange. But as you can see, we're kind of getting through this pretty decently. That shield from Miscreated Monster is incredibly valuable. You know, not to mention the fact that we're getting, you know, the big damage out of him as well. He heals himself, which is great. Now, obviously, watch here because we're about to get a buff exchange here from the boss, and if the boss steals our ally protection, that can definitely be problematic. Right there it goes, got ally protection. So now every time we hit the boss, we're actually hitting Miscreated Monster and killed him there. But thankfully, we have Revive. We have Rector Drath out there to heal us, bring us back from the dead, which then makes it super valuable for us. That's how I'm able to use his ally protection without any concern. If I didn't have Rector Drath, I'd have to make sure I time that skill. So I have to make sure all the buffs that I put out fall off before the boss gets that buff exchange ability going on. And so that's generally how you would manual it. But there you go, Whisper doing crazy stuff. Didn't even have to worry about the HP exchange, killed them before that even came about. So that's kind of how I went through this. I actually like this team a lot. I think it was very effective. I think Whisper's great for this, but bringing in somebody like Rector Drath, super, super valuable. And that's going to be the hardest part with this. There's not a lot of champions that are well suited for this boss. Now, if I don't have a Rector Drath, if I don't have a Doom Priest, I'm 100% trying to bring in Sinesha. She's also going to be another heal champion that can work for this, and I'm probably going to have to manual this. Without a Reviver, manualing is kind of your only option because you need to time all the skills, the buffs, the debuffs, to make it work for you, right? And so that's going to be really the approach that you're going to need to take with this. This is definitely one of the harder bosses. And so if you're struggling with this one, don't feel bad. It was absolutely the last one I was able to fix. Okay, so we can start off by looking at Whisper. Now, I did build this Whisper for Hydra. Haven't used her there yet, but this is what I built her for. And you'll be able to see I got Savage set on her, which is obviously going to do a lot of damage for us. So maybe these stats aren't quite where you can get to, but you can definitely see she does a lot of damage, even built like this. She'll probably do pretty good damage, not built quite this way. I got Accuracy on her. Don't necessarily need that, right? It's to land her Weaken debuff, but decreased defense is usually enough. We got plenty of crit rate, crit damage, which are always good. The speed's really slow, though. 173 is definitely under what I would like. I generally try to get my champions up to around 200 if I can. But, you know, very low survivability stats, hence a Reviver being really valuable. But when you have ally protection on your team, you don't need the survivability to be nearly as high as you would otherwise, which is really helpful. Mastery-wise, you can see offensive tree down to Helm Smasher and then support tree here. We also have Thalesia. As you can see, I did not have her fully kitted out in this run, which shows that you don't need crazy stats all the time. Again, 2,000 defense, 3,500, 35,000 HP, 205 speed. That's what we're looking for. You can see a good crit rate and solid crit damage. She can hit decently hard. I have probably an absurd amount of resistance on her really for this, and not nearly enough accuracy, but we were able to get what we needed done with that level, which is great for us. Obviously, if I get another perception set in there, the accuracy level will get where we want it to be. As far as our masteries, offensive tree down to War Master, and then defensive tree just to add a little bit more turn meter and survivability. We've also got Rector Drath here. I do have her in a reflex set. I think that's absolutely the best set for her. And I do have her built for Hydra. So that means she's going to be very well built, right? I've got 250 speed, 3,000 defense, 44,000 HP. These numbers aren't ridiculously crazy, right? And the reason for that is I have a lot of resistance on her, which you don't necessarily need. In fact, and when I would first do this, I wouldn't have that at all because I just wouldn't have the stats for it. But I would try to get her as fast as you can. The more she goes, the more often you're going to have Perfect Veil, the more healing you're going to be able to get on your champions, and the more often you're going to be able to revive as well. That's definitely one thing, as well as, you know, as much survivability as possible so that she doesn't die. I think that's crucial. Mastery-wise, we went down support tree and offensive tree to War Master. I think you could very easily go down offensive tree, support tree and defensive tree and get really good results that way as well. Our goal really is just to maximize our healing. That's all we're trying to do. The War Master just helps us beat the boss a little bit faster than we would otherwise. And then we got our Doom Priest here. You can see I have her in a reflex or a relentless set, which is actually another great set for healers in general. So, you know, relentless or reflex are generally the two sets that I recommend. For Doom Priest, I think there's nothing better than relentless because every time she takes a turn, she cleanses a debuff off everybody, and I think that's super valuable. So multiple turns can do the job even better than otherwise. As far as how I built her, really fast, obviously 236 speed, that's kind of what we're looking for here. And then just survivability stats with the defense and the HP. I do have resistance on her. I think that's useful. She doesn't need accuracy, so that doesn't hurt. If you have the stats for it, you can build that in as well and get good results that way too. Of course, she cleanses, so not really necessary, but doesn't hurt. Mastery-wise, I took her down the offensive. I took her down the defensive tree and the support tree, Timeless Intervention, to get more turn meter boost. I think this is a great tree for her. This is a great way to build her. You could build your Rector Drath very similarly, just trying to maximize turn meter, maximize survivability, and maximize healing. Those are kind of the things that we're looking to do here. And then very last, we have Miscreated Monster, who's a beast, obviously. Now, I have this Miscreated Monster. I haven't really touched him in a long time, but 190 speed, that's kind of like a spider speed for Miscreated Monster. And that's pretty good. It's not crazy fast, but it's definitely not slow and allows us to keep ally protection up and shields up as much as possible in the fight. Also, when talking about those Valkyries, to be able to stun them more often than not, which is vital to beating them. 258 accuracy is enough to land those stuns, like I said, we need. Good crit rate, good crit damage. The more of that we give, the bigger our shields are, which I think is really valuable. Good HP at 72,000. Not worried about the defense because we have so much HP, and this turned out to be, I think, a pretty good build for this. Mastery wise, we go down the support tree and we go down the offensive tree here. Again, trying to maximize the healing and the shields specifically that he puts up. So those are the kind of healing stats we took here, is to maximize the shields and just kind of extend the duration of our buffs. So the ally protection, the shields will last as long as possible. And then I like War Master on them. Helm Smasher is another really good option though as well. So that was Night Revenant. This one's really tough. It's not an easy one to get through, so try to be patient with yourself. I remember I used, I think when I first did this, I had Whirlim in here. I had Whirlim, Golden Reaper, and Sinesha all in stun sets. Like, to be able to get through it was extremely, extremely difficult when I was first approaching this, right? I didn't use Whisper even. I didn't have Thalesia. I think I might have even used Bestophus just to land a decreased defense. It's tough. It's not easy to do, but you can do it with some persistence and some dedication to it. It's definitely something that's possible, right? Utilizing stun sets can be really, really valuable as far as getting through the waves to get to the boss, because the waves with Valkyries is almost as difficult, if not more so, than the boss himself, who's also really tough. So it's a challenge, but definitely something that can be done. As always, focus on the speed. That will help you a lot. Taking more turns means more healing, means more debuffs, means more damage being done to the enemy. So definitely something I recommend. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Hopefully you're enjoying the series. And that's all we got. So if you are, don't forget to subscribe. Until next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.